Thanks to you at home for staying with us on this busy, busy news day. We begin tonight with an announcement from the President of the United States. Not this one, I mean the last one.
For years, my administration has been calling on Congress to expand domestic oil production. Unfortunately, Democrats on Capitol Hill have rejected virtually every proposal. One of the most important steps we can take to expand American oil production is to increase access to offshore exploration on the Outer Continental Shelf, or what's called the OCS. Today, I've issued a memorandum to lift the executive prohibition on oil exploration in the OCS.
That was President George W. Bush in July 2008, lifting the presidential ban on offshore oil drilling in the Outer Continental Shelf. It was a presidential ban that had been first put in place by President Bush's dad in 1990 after the big Exxon Valdez disaster in Alaska. Here was why Bush II said he was lifting the drilling ban of Bush I.
Advances in technology have made it possible to conduct oil exploration in the OCS that is out of sight, protects coral reefs and habitats, and protects against oil spills.
See, the technology is so safe now, there's no need to worry about oil spills anymore. Now, as I mentioned, President George W. Bush here was rescinding the presidential drilling ban that his father had put in place after the Exxon Valdez disaster. He was sort of trying to box Congress into repealing Congress's drilling ban as well. Congress's ban was even older than the presidential ban. Congress's ban had been put in place starting in the early 1980s.
With this action, the executive branch's restrictions on this exploration have been cleared away. This means that the only thing standing between the American people and these vast oil resources is action from the U.S. Congress. But Congress has restricted access to key parts of the OCS since the early 1980s.
Well, why had Congress done that? Why had Congress restricted offshore drilling since the early 1980s? Because of this. The Ixtoc oil well blowout in the Gulf of Mexico. It blew up in 1979. They did not cap it until well into 1980. It released an estimated 140 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. In trying to figure out what to do about that, Congress decided to put a moratorium on drilling in hundreds of thousands of acres of federal waters. Sorry, no more drilling. Did you see what just happened, people? After a huge spill like that, you can see how politicians at the time maybe might want to stop and reassess things for a while. After the big Ixtoc disaster, that's what Congress did. After the big Exxon Valdez disaster, that's what the first President Bush did. And after the most recent BP oil disaster in the Gulf, that's what President Obama has done, implementing a 6-month moratorium on deep water oil drilling. Moratoriums on drilling are what we have done in the past to respond to big oil disasters. The idea, presumably, is that we're going to make drilling safer before we allow it to expand again. And even though President Bush touted that supposed improved safety back in 2008 when he was lifting the presidential moratorium, we no longer have to take anyone's sober assurances about things like that. That issue has now been factually, conclusively settled. The oil industry in 2010 is proving conclusively, day after every single freaking day, that what they do is really not safe, that they are routinely drilling at depths where they have no idea how to respond if anything goes wrong. They admit it now, in word and in deed, every single day.
Tomorrow, BP plans to send down the containment dome to cover one of the 2 remaining leaks. But this has never been tried before at 5,000 feet under the sea.
Rice University professor Satish Nagaraja says this has never been tried in water so deep.
I hope it works. It has not been used at that depth before.
These vessels started the long-awaited top kill procedure this afternoon, a maneuver never tried before a mile beneath the sea.
They've never attempted to put cement down at this depth.
Something never been done at that depth before.
We've got the junk shot method, and we've also got another method, which is to put a valve on top of the existing system or a new blowout preventer.
But again, you've never attempted any of these at this depth.
That's right, Meredith. That's right.
That's right. All of the techniques, the ones that sound good, the ones that sound dumb, the ones that sound made up, all of them that have been tried so far to stop the Deepwater Horizon BP oil disaster, all of them have never been tried before at this depth. Doesn't that make you wonder how many other American wells are out there right now where if something went wrong, they couldn't fix it? Doesn't it kind of seem like a wake-up call that the safety technology has to get way better before it can ever again be considered safe to drill that deep? Not if you're an oil company. Here's Shell Oil in a posting on their website more than a month after the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded, celebrating the world's deepest offshore oil platform, located 200 miles off the Texas coast. Woohoo! Top that! The oil industry has already proven it doesn't know how to deal with a spill at 5,000 feet. But here's Shell Oil bragging about their new well, which is moored in 8,000 feet of water. Hey, Ayn Rand fans. Hey, libertarians, if you were counting on the industry to police itself in the wake of the BP disaster, this is what that looks like. This BP oil disaster may have spooked all of us watching it at home, but it clearly has not spooked the industry. And it apparently hasn't spooked politicians who love the industry either. Republican Governor Haley Barbour of Mississippi, who met with President Obama as he toured the Gulf today, pledged to deliver the message that Gulf Coast citizens want more deepwater drilling. There's no reason for it to stop, he says. There's no reason for this totally unnecessary moratorium.
We need to get to the bottom of it, find out what happened, make sure it doesn't happen again. But I think it is very reasonable to continue to drill.
Don't you love this, we need to get to the bottom of this thing? We need to find out what happened. Here's a hint, Governor. The well blew out 5,000 feet below sea level, so they can't fix it. Oil companies don't know how to fix it when something goes wrong in really deep water, turns out, which is maybe why they should have to figure that stuff out before they keep drilling in really deep water. You really need a study for this? This idea is really that mystifying to you? Joining us now is Bob Kavnar. He is a 30-year veteran of the oil and gas industry. He most recently headed up Milagro Exploration, a privately held firm with operations along the Gulf Coast. Mr. Kavnar, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Rachel.
I know you started in the oil and gas industry in the mid-'70s. Can you tell us what substantial advancements have been made in cleanup and oil spill response technology since then, if there have been any?
You know, Rachel, the amazing thing is in the last 30 plus years that I've been in this business, we've had huge leaps in technology in terms of being able to drill deeper and farther and in deeper water. But there's been almost no growth or no money spent in safety systems and recovery from large oil spills. We're basically doing the same thing we were doing 30 years ago.
Is there concern within the industry about that, or is this just raw incentives, that the incentives aren't there in terms of the regulatory structure and legal liability to push the industry in that direction?
You know, the problem with the oil and gas industry is it often gets on the wrong side of a lot of really important issues, and regulation, oversight, and cleanup of large spills like this don't really make the top 10. And that's a lot of the problem we have in this industry, where we don't focus on those issues that affect everyone besides just the industry.
One of the things that we've learned about over the past couple of months, as we've all learned to read these permit applications and these filings with the government, is that the oil industry predicted that the chances of a blowout like what happened at the Deepwater Horizon, they predicted that the chances of a blowout there were essentially zero. One of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you tonight is I wanted to ask you if, just from your insight from inside the industry, do they actually believe that a chance of a blowout is zero, or are they conscious that that's just what they have to say in order to get a permit?
This is part of the complacency that I've been talking about over the last month or so that the industry has experienced. The industry actually has thought that a chance of a blowout like this was zero or close to zero, or that they had the technology to stop it if it did happen. The problem with drilling in deep water like this, it's sort of like driving a car from the back seat. You can reach the steering wheel, but you're not very good at getting it to go where you want it to go, and that's a lot of the problem in the deep water.
Do you think, just from your professional experience, that there is a way to safely drill in deep water? One of the things that us laymen, us people who don't know the industry all that well, have been thinking about is the idea of this relief well. If that's really the only sure way to shut down an out-of-control well, should there be a relief well drilled with every production well, for example?
Right. Yeah, we were talking. I've been talking a lot about the relief well with other people too. The concept of drilling the two wells at the same time. The problem there is that you have just as many safety issues with the relief well as you do with the primary well. The real issue here is making sure that the well is controlled at the seafloor with the blowout preventer. And I've got to tell you, right now, I have no confidence that what we have now is sufficient to continue drilling. I support this moratorium. In fact, I'm not sure it's long enough to really do the redesign that needs to happen.
Over the course of the moratorium, which again you say you support, is there any way to make the industry innovate, I guess, to make the industry concentrate on the safety field and develop in that regard? Or should we expect them just to wait out the moratorium, expect political pressure from governors like Haley Barbour and Bobby Jindal to end the moratorium and put them back where they started without having to spend any money on safety?
Of course, I would call for the industry to step up and take those steps without government intervention.